I think the one nice things about the Psychology of Technology conference is that the ability to kind of weave back and forth between a wide variety of different topics as it relates to technology, and so each one kind of focuses on sort of one slice. And so in this morning we saw a couple different ones, and the last one was sort of focusing on some of the dangers of technology and so forth. And then I think it also can be said that there's an awful lot of things that the ways in which technology and AI kind of really make people's lives better and so forth, if kind of used in the right way. So we're going to have a couple talks that focus on that. And we're really pleased. The first of our speakers is going to be Avi Goldfarb, who's the Rotman Chair of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare and Professor of Marketing at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Avi has published extensively on the use of AI and is co-author, I think is one of the best books that's at least I've read anyway in this area on power and prediction, disruptive economics of artificial intelligence. And he's going to be talking about some of those ideas. Okay.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for inviting me to this conference, and I'm really excited to talk about AI in a slightly different angle than you just saw. But I'm actually going to start in a similar place, which is about hype. And just, if you've been paying attention lately, you've seen people say things like, "It's going to transform science. Artificial intelligence, forget this diplomacy, forget human diplomacy." Like, yeah, we just heard forget human diplomacy, so maybe we should just go to AI diplomacy. Maybe that will solve the problem. AI tools will solve climate change, and they're going to cure cancer. Okay, now, so I think in this room you understand the hyperbole, but even if some small fraction of that hyperbole is true, it should be no surprise that there's potential to add trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to the global economy. Okay. I don't believe the hyperbole from the previous side, but I do believe that there is potential to add trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to the global economy. But the starting point has to be an understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence in 2022. When we're talking about artificial intelligence in 2022, we are not talking about the robots that we see in science fiction, right? We're not talking about machines that can do just about everything we humans can do. Maybe it's like an optimistic machine universe like Star Wars, because the machines listen to us, or maybe it's a pessimistic machine universe like everything else in science fiction where the machines don't listen to us. I don't think that idea, just by the way, of an AGI, an artificial general intelligence, is crazy. I used to think it was crazy. I was convinced a few years ago, witnessing this debate between Jan LeCun and Daniel Kahneman, where they started debating, and then they came to the conclusion that, yeah, someday this is possible. I'm like, okay, those two people think that, yeah, someday this is possible. Who am I to disagree? But it's important to recognize. Okay.
Sorry. No, keep going.
Okay. I'm like. But it's important to recognize that that is not the technology we're talking about today. Truly artificial general intelligence, maybe you'll like this sentence, has been 20 to 50 years away since the literature from the 1960s, and it continues to be 20 to 50 years away. This is very much not the technology we're talking about today. Okay, now you're happy. Good. Okay, the technology we're talking about today is machine learning. Machine learning is prediction technology, and in our first book that came out about 4 years ago, we were economists, and we said, hey, a very useful way to frame what's about to happen, the book came out in 2018, is there's this rapid drop in the cost of prediction. And when something gets cheaper, Econ 101 tells us that we're going to do more of it. So cheap prediction means more prediction. We're going to find all sorts of applications of prediction that we didn't really see before. So we're going to start using prediction tools in good old-fashioned prediction problems, like is someone going to pay back their loan? You got to predict that. Is someone going to make a claim on their insurance? You got to predict that. Then we're going to recognize there's a whole bunch of things that turn out to be prediction problems that we didn't realize, like medical diagnosis is prediction, right? What does your doctor do when they diagnose you? They take in data about your symptoms. They fill in the missing information, the cause of those symptoms. That's prediction. Image recognition is prediction. And so we started to see companies using prediction all the time in all sorts of different places. Amazon's using prediction on recommendations they make. We run a program for science-based startups. In that program, over the last 10 years, we've seen hundreds of AI startups all doing little predictions within existing workflows. So, Atomwise is a company that predicts which molecules bind with which proteins to try to help with drug discovery. Blue Jay Legal is a company that tries to predict, given the facts of a tax case, what kind of information do the lawyers need in order to make their arguments. BenchSci predicts what kind of what images a particular pharmaceutical scientist is going to need to look at from the scientific literature. And Ada Support predicts what a customer wants when they email you. They're all simple predictions within existing workflows, AI companies. And so with more and more and more companies saying, applying AI, more and more academics using artificial intelligence, we start to see things, including, where's my Wharton example? Yeah, Wharton right here. AI is the new electricity, okay? And that sounds awesome. That sounds exciting, right? Electricity is all around us. It seems to have transformed the way we work and the way we live in over the 20th century and certainly today. So if AI is the new electricity, that sounds amazing. And then you look at the data. And the data tell us that almost nobody is using AI. This does not look like a technology that's transformed the way we work and the way we live. This is from the 2018 census, because census data takes a while to get out of the census. But it's 5% of manufacturing, under 5% of retail, under 5%. Maybe no industry has been more hyped than healthcare for AI. Almost nobody is using AI in healthcare. Okay, there's a lot of potential for it, but it's just not happening. And or if you can, slightly more recent data, this is percentage of jobs by industry that require machine learning skills. Here are the Googles and Facebooks of the world. 3% of their employees have AI skills. This is not like transforming that industry at scale. And here we are in healthcare. It's actually healthcare and social assistance because it's NAICS, but healthcare is less than social assistance. We're at something like 1 in 500 jobs require machine learning skills. Okay. So we see people saying AI is the new electricity, and yet when we look at the data, it doesn't look like the way we think about electricity today. But then you take a second and you look back at the history of electricity. And it turns out that in the 1880s, it was clear that electricity was going to be a big deal to those who were paying attention. It was clear that electric lights and electric motors were going to change the way we worked and lived over the following years. But it took until the 1920s till the median household and the median factory in the United States were electrified. What took so long? Well, the first applications of electricity were put in factories that looked like this. So this was a factory, an image of a factory as it might have looked like in the 1880s. Okay? And you can see there's a steam engine powering a factory, and there's all these belts and shafts connecting every machine to the steam engine. And so you build your factory around the steam engine. The most power-hungry machines have to be as close to the steam engine as possible because you don't want to dissipate energy. And the further away from the machine, the more energy you dissipate. And so what happened when factories first got electrified, they took out the steam engine, and they dropped in an electric motor, and they did nothing else. And a handful of people thought that was worth it, and almost everybody didn't. And so by 1900, we had these point solutions where they took out the steam engine, dropped in an electric motor, saved 5, 10, 15% on energy, and a whole lot of nothing. And for most factories, that just wasn't worth doing. It wasn't worth it to save a little bit on energy to transform the way power went into your factory. But then people realized electricity wasn't just cheap power. It was a different kind of power. It allowed you to decouple the power source from the machine. And once you can decouple the power source from the machine, now you can organize your factory differently. And when that started to happen, we started to see the modern factory. A factory with inputs in one end and outputs out the other, and a structured and organized workflow. This is why we started to see factories in rural areas and not urban areas, because rural land is cheap. They were on very flat surfaces. They did rely on electric lighting because they were inside. And it was modular production. The modern modular factory is a consequence of a reorganization, a restructuring of how the factories were built because of this decoupling of the machine from the power source. And right around the time people started to realize, hey, we can build new factories, a new kind of factory, that's when adoption started to take off. And a similar thing was happening on the household side. So we think when we see AI as the new electricity, and then we see those adoption numbers, it sounds familiar. And it sounds familiar because it takes 40 years. It took 40 years for electricity from recognizing the potential of the technology till it actually delivering an impact on most people and most workplaces. So here we are now in the equivalent to the 1880s, the between times where we can see the potential of the technology, but it hasn't happened yet. All of these applications I just described so far have been what we call point solutions. What that means is you look at an existing workflow, you identify within that workflow some human task that's a prediction task that could be automated. You take out the human and you drop in the machine. And sometimes that's worth it. It saves you 5, 10, 15% on personnel costs or something else. Maybe increases quality by 5, 10, 15% without dropping personnel. But it's pretty incremental. And so for most companies, it's just not worth the effort. What we need to think through is what that transformed industry looks like, that factory of the future, because of prediction technology. This has not happened very often yet. There is at least one industry that I see as being transformed from moving from a point solution where we said, okay, this is the old way we used to do things, and we just took out an old process and dropped in a new, to an entirely new way it's being structured. So this is a review paper I wrote, because I wrote it almost a decade ago. Like, what's different about online advertising? It seems like there's lots of things that are a little bit different about online advertising, but fundamentally, online advertising is different from offline, which I argued, because of targeting. What's targeting? Targeting is largely about filling in the missing information. It's about predicting the characteristics of a given user. So how did the early industry take advantage of targeting? Well, let me show you how the magazine industry prices and sells their advertising. So this is People Magazine. This is their rate card from 2019. The rate card would have looked very similar in 1999 and in 1979. Okay? The numbers would have been different. And so, if you want a full page ad in People Magazine, no matter what you're advertising, it's going to cost you $400,000. Okay? That's if you want color. If you want it black and white, it's going to cost you $280,000. And that's just true. There is a rate card, and that's how the magazine industry prices advertising. I was a graduate student in the 1990s studying online advertising. Okay? And so in early 2000, as I was writing up my dissertation, I'm like, hey, I wonder how this buying advertising works. And so I wrote to the Encyclopedia Britannica and said, hey, graduate student, I want to know how online advertising works. How does it work? And they said, well, we have this rate card. Here's our rate card. Just like People Magazine, you can, get anything you want for $55, but if you want to target, because we know stuff about what people are looking for, it's going to cost you $65 per 1,000 people. It's a point solution. Same old way they used to do it. And in case you think Britannica is the issue, DoubleClick did the same thing. Okay, so DoubleClick in 2000 had this rate card. If you want to do search advertising on DoubleClick, it cost you $25 per 1,000 views, no matter what the person was searching for. If you wanted to do, and they had targeted data, like they knew what you were looking for, but it was just a rate card. But then the industry realized they could move from this kind of a point solution to take advantage of that targeting with a whole bunch of other co-invention. They could invent a whole bunch of other processes. So DoubleClick today, as part of Google, has all of these other processes, right, that they've invented, along with others, to create this crazy ad ecosystem that we have today. This ecosystem is fundamentally, it's digitization, yes, but it's targeting at the center. It's the ability to know, to have some prediction for a given user of what they're interested in, and then there's all these players that try to bid on that and figure out and solve a very difficult problem in tenths of a second. So most of the action we've seen are these point solutions. We've seen some of these, at least one, system-level solution so far. How do we move from point to system solution? To get there, we need to understand how the technology works a little bit. Like, what is it that's exciting, that would sort of be the engine of the factory of the future, or the organization of the future underlying prediction? And what is it that, that makes it difficult for companies to just jump in? When we make a decision today, in our heads, it's a combination of a prediction about different states of the world and our judgment of the payoffs in those different states of the world. My favorite way to unpack this is from a science fiction movie. It's from iRobot. I think it probably came out before many of you were born. It's an okay movie. It's not the best movie in the history of the world. But it has this great scene. Okay, so Will Smith is the protagonist in iRobot, and he hates robots. Okay, and there's this flashback scene about why he hates robots. Here's why he hates robots. He and a little girl are driving, and they get into a car accident, and they're sinking into a river, and it's pretty clear that both Will Smith and this girl are about to drown. And then a robot comes along and saves him and not the girl. And that's why he hates robots. Interestingly, because it was a machine, he could audit it. This is related to Duncan's talk earlier. We can measure it in a way, right? He could audit it and figure out, okay, the machine predicted that he had a 45% chance of survival. And the machine predicted the girl had an 11% chance of survival. And that's why the machine saved him and not the girl. Now, I understand this is science fiction, but it's a useful thought experiment. And then he says, but 11% was more than enough. And a human being would have known that. That's a statement about judgment. That's, once we have the prediction of 45 versus 11, it is a really difficult cognitive task. For most of us, it's not something we're used to think through, okay, what are the relative payoffs of this human's life versus that human's life? Implicitly in the movie, the machine says a life is a life. And in the movie, he says, no, his life is worth less than a quarter of a child's life. I don't know that all humans agree with that, but that's the essence of the challenge. Once you have a prediction, you actually have to make a decision. You don't get this benefit of the ambiguity of, I don't know if there's the prediction or the judgment. They come together. And that can make things hard, that decoupling. Okay, another Wharton story. Okay, so it'll seem like a Michigan story, but it's sort of a Wharton story. So a few years ago, there was a water crisis in Flint, Michigan. There was lead in their pipes. And lead is a deadly neurotoxin, and so you do not want it in your drinking water. And so the city started a process for trying to dig up and find the lead pipes. But that was really hard, because to figure out if the pipe was lead, they had to actually dig to look at the pipe and see if it was lead. Once they dug and observed, they could just replace it. That was actually pretty straightforward. So each time they dug cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So two professors at the University of Michigan, Eric Schwartz, who's a Wharton alum, that's why, okay, and Jacob Abernathy, who's a marketing PhD, built an AI, built a machine learning tool to predict whether a given pipe was lead. And their tool was really good. About 80% of the time that they said a pipe was lead, it actually was, compared to a base rate of about 15 in the town. So that's incredible. And the city started using it, and it was great. And they saved lots of people from drinking toxic drinking water for months or years to come. But then the story went sour, because people in the city of Flint started to say, "Hey, how come the people on the next street over, they're getting their pipes dug up, and my pipes aren't dug up? That's not fair." What would be fair is a systematic street by street process, starting, of course, with my street. And then they complained to their politicians. And the politicians said, "Yeah, right. Why are you listening to these professors' algorithm? That doesn't make sense. Let's go street by street. Let's be systematic." And the success rate dropped. It went from 80% to 20%. Okay. The politicians said, "Oh, yeah, there's this great prediction. We don't want to follow that prediction." Okay. And so the headline was, "Feel good story goes bad." But the story didn't end there. The story didn't end there because we had an explicit prediction. And once you could see the numbers go from 80% to 20%, you can see, wait, we are making the wrong call. This is the wrong decision. The judgment, the old ambiguity of going street by street, whoever the politicians felt was convenient to go first, pushed up against the hard reality of, wow, we used to be 80% accurate, and now we're 20%. And so a judge came along and said, no, you actually have to listen to Eric and Jacob's algorithm. You have to follow it. It is the law in Flint, Michigan, to follow that algorithm those professors at the University of Michigan developed. And so this is just an example of, once the prediction and the judgment get decoupled, it gets very hard to, sometimes for the people who used to hold power by combining those prediction and judgments and benefiting from the ambiguity, to continue to control decision-making. And so the success went right back up, and lots of people had safe drinking water again. So we're in the between times. We don't have these new systems yet. So it's really hard for us to think through how do we get there. We can imagine, like, point solutions are easy to imagine. Okay? And so the academic literature on the economic impact of AI so far, dominated by Doron Acemoglu and David Otter and Pascal Restrepo and others, says, hey, here's our workflow. There's tasks within a workflow. Let's take out some human tasks, drop it in machines. That's not going to look so good for the humans. Okay? And that's been the dominant framing. Trying to imagine, oh, no, but there's going to be a new system and it's going to be better. Well, that requires creativity, and that becomes it's inherently not an empirical exercise. It's a thought experiment. Okay, so here's a thought experiment. Okay. Imagine you go to your doctor. Your doctor looks over your symptoms, looks at blood work, says, you know what? Thank you for the fee. There's a 5% chance something catastrophic is going to happen to you over the next year. If that happens, we'll give you $500,000. See you next year. You would, like, what? That's not what's supposed to happen to the doctor. The doctor's supposed to, tell you what's wrong, but also provide a treatment, right? A diagnosis and then a treatment, and say, oh, but if you do this, things will be better. Now, okay, so doctors don't work that way, but insurance companies do. That is exactly what happens at your insurance company, right? So if your home insurance, what's your home insurance? They say they have an excellent prediction about what's the likelihood that something catastrophic is going to happen to your home. And they say, you know what? We'll price it for you, give us some money, and if something really bad happens, then we'll give you some more money. And they say they're fulfilling their mission of helping homeowners have peace of mind against catastrophic loss. That's not peace of mind that we'll give you some money if something catastrophic happens, and we know exactly how likely that is to be. Peace of mind would be, well, wait, your house is likely to have a catastrophic loss because you're likely to have leaky pipes. And we have a good prediction, now that we have better data about your house, that there are likely to be leaky pipes. And so we can give you a device, or even incentivize you to put a device in your home that will track whether your pipes leak, and then shut down your water if there's a catastrophe about to happen. That's possible. Hasn't happened. It's possible. It's a vision for how better prediction can change an industry, how an industry behaves in order to better fulfill the mission. And so when we start to, whatever part of the of society you touch on, when you're trying to think through how can, what's that new system going to look like for my industry? Think through what's your mission, and what are the various ways you fail on delivering your mission because you're not taking advantage of the potential for prediction. And then, there's technical points about, whether those predictions are good enough today, or you need to wait 5 years or 10 years or more, and how to get all those other pieces together. That's the 3-day executive program version, not the half an hour talk. Okay, but the essence of it is we're in the between times. It feels like we're in the 1880s in AI. I see the potential of prediction technology to lead to transformation of the way we work and the way we live. And I think a lot of us see that potential. A lot of us see the harms, but a lot of us see the potential. But that requires reimagining how things work and thinking through what's it going to look like at the other side, of those 40 years. And maybe if we take advantage of what we know about economic history, it won't take 40 years because we've been looking for the kinds of co-invention that will allow us to get to, the organization of the future that takes advantage of machine learning and AI. Thank you.
We have time for questions.
Yeah.
Sorry for being grumpy at the AGI part. I just always favorite.
Yeah.
So,
No, you didn't know where I was going.
yeah.
Okay.
I love the online, obviously the online advertising example. I guess 2 questions. So one is that I would think of that more as algorithms versus AI. I also get annoyed when we use AI too much. But I guess the question is how much of it, and I guess the question is for this different kinds of system transformation, would it behoove us, do you think, to think more in terms of algorithms versus, adaptive statistics, which I like better, or AI?
Okay.
And I guess the only reason I bring that up is because I think when we say AI, people think like human replacement, and they just keep thinking of doing this versus algorithms. I think maybe we can think more. I don't know if you.
So I would love if you keep using the word prediction machines instead.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Because, that was the title of my first book.
Okay.
Um,
All right. There you
so-
go.
so-
You gotta pump up the sales. No, I
Okay.
get it.
So, no, but so when I'm talking about AI, it's very like I'm thinking about it as better prediction technology, and I think one of the to your broader point, algorithms or prediction, all of these system level transformations are going to require many innovations. Okay, and so we think about the ad tech ecosystem we have today. That after what we heard this morning, we realize there's going to be a whole bunch of other innovations that are going to be happening over the next few years. At the center of that is targeting, which is the ability to and that's prediction technology. Okay. But then there's a whole bunch of other innovations. Hey, they figured out auctions. Like that, there was a whole bunch of innovations in auctions. I don't even know if those are algorithms. Maybe they are. I don't know. I think about it as Econ 101. So there's this suite of technologies, and there's this paper by Nate Rosenberg in Journal of Economic History, 1963, that talks about the set of technologies that underlie the machine tools revolution in the 19th century. And there was no one technology that led to that transformation. It was a suite of technologies together. And almost surely that's going to be the story here, which is that a suite of data-driven prediction technologies, there's going to be some causal inference there, there's going to be some algorithms there, and a whole bunch of other things. Great question, thank you. Yeah.
So from your talk, it's not clear whether you are positioning yourself as in favor or against AI. Maybe you don't want to, but what is the dark side?
So I don't think... I don't even know what it means to be in favor or against, but let me say, so I think when we're using these tools as a point solution, where we're looking at our current workflows, we're taking out a human and dropping in a machine, we're thinking about our current human biases, and we're just saying, okay, instead of the human biased process that we have right now, we're going to just have a machine biased process. Like, in those cases, we can see the harms. The last chapter of our book sort of flips that over and says, well, once you start thinking through, I don't want to put this. Once you start thinking through how awful humans are, you realize the potential for, responsible software to overcome many of those issues. So Sendhil Mullainathan has a whole bunch of work on AI and discrimination, and there was this paper that he wrote 20 years ago where he sent resumes, he and others sent resumes, sometimes with white-sounding names and sometimes with black-sounding names, to lots of businesses. It was a randomized controlled trial. It cost thousands of dollars. It cost years of their lives. And they eventually figured out that businesses discriminate, but they couldn't say which businesses discriminate. And then fast forward 15 years, and he did another study on trying to figure out if machine learning algorithms discriminated. And he simulated it for 2 hours and figured out that it discriminated. Okay. And so there's a New York Times column about this. It's a beautiful description of the comparison. And so there's reasons to be optimistic that we can do better than we already are. Not necessarily because the machines are so great, but because the old processes are so awful. Yeah.
I really liked your example of Flint, Michigan, because it's like, okay, we have a system that really works, and then, we have this people problem of like, why aren't we doing it this old way that seems much more systematic? And I think one of the big questions is like, how do we get people to that space of, hey, we're going to now trust these systems that you may not understand and move towards a system that because I know there's a tendency to do more of a tech panic when it comes to these novel systems,
So when we think through system level change,
right,
and how we're going to move from point solutions to system solutions, a whole bunch of innovation is going to have to happen on trust. And I actually think the people in this room are relatively well suited, certainly relative to me, well suited to start thinking through what those technologies are in terms of, rather than thinking through how do we stop it,
right,
think through what does the technology need to look like in order for it to work in a way that people can trust it and should trust it. It's not about fooling people; it's about actually making it trustworthy.
right.
Okay, I think we're